This video contains flashing lights, unsettling content, violent content, jump scares and sudden loud noises. Viewer discretion advised.
It's that one location gamers dread to return to. The level they fear the most. The atmosphere is so overwhelming, the obstacles terrifying, the impact profound.
Take this list as a warning. Prepare yourselves in advance for the top 50 scary levels in games.
The Desert of the Knaaren, Rayman 3. Rayman arrives here from the land of the living dead, and with a name like that, you can bet that anything after it is far worse. The Desert of the Knaaren is barren on the surface, and the city beneath is made of cold hard stone. It is populated by the race of the same name, who are completely impervious to anything Rayman can throw at them. So much of your time will be spent avoiding them at all costs. A single touch can deal a lot of damage, and since the cave paths aren't altogether huge, you'll have to time your moves right to get around danger. It certainly doesn't help that the moment you drop in, your companion glow box is captured, and you're left to your own devices. You can hurt the zombie chickens at least, but they always come back to strike again. Nothing truly dies here in the Desert of Knaaren, but Rayman certainly will. Big Boo's Haunt, Super Mario 64. Mario games are fun, exciting adventures filled with high-stakes activities and exhilarating daredevilry, but they're not scary. That is, they weren't scary until Big Boo's Haunt, otherwise known as Big Boo's Mansion. The thing about this level is that absolutely nothing is safe. Every movement Mario makes, everything he touches or interacts with is a potential threat. From false floors to teethy pianos. Books will fly from their shelves and attempt to batter you, coffins will rise up from their places, and you will be taunted by eerie carousel music. Big Boo's Haunt is also, of course, filled with its namesake, the Boos. However, what we once knew to be shy little ghosties have found their autonomy and an alarming capacity for violence. Should Mario approach them, they will kill him, which was quite the shock for aficionados of the Super Mario series when it was first discovered. The bosses are also somewhat unsettling, with the Big Mr. Eye being the most disturbing, as he is a disembodied eyeball hell-bent on killing Mario. Big Boo's Haunt is iconically known as one of the levels that gave a lot of 90s kids enough nightmares to drive their parents mad. So perhaps consider that before you go on a nostalgia trip with your children.
Spooky. Conker's Bad Fur Day. What was just meant to be a friendly visit to a long-lost ancestor turns very quickly into a mad fight to stay alive. After the Grim Reaper assists him on the path towards the manor of Count Batula, Conker discovers a graveyard infested with the undead. Luckily, you've been given a shotgun to dispense of the rotting bears, but these things can really bite, taking you down as a pack. The winding narrow roads leading to the front doors paved with bricks and skeletal worms that can pick you up in their mouths and shake you until blood spurts out. Once inside, Count Batula decides at the last minute to spare your life, in exchange for helping him churn invading villagers in a giant gear contraption and feed the juices directly to him. This bloody ordeal wouldn't be so bad if you weren't already transformed into a bat and had to fly through the creepy mansion carrying your prey one at a time. Eventually, Batula eats too much ground flesh and bone, falling into his contraption and breaking the spell. Being a whole squirrel again doesn't help much when you have to face the undead again, navigating around or cutting through them as you search for the 3 keys that will help you escape. By far the most frightening part of the whole level, however, is in your escape, as you must roll down the path on top of a barrel, trying desperately not to fall off into the abyss below.
Eyeball World, Yume Nikki. If exploring someone's dreams is like diving into their subconscious, then Madosuke should fear her own mind after seeing Eyeball World. Bloody eyeballs lay around the void, staring dead into space, arms just out of the ground, twitching, hoping to reach the heavens. Disembodied legs can be found as you wander through, some in pairs, some all alone. Eyes and lips without a face can be found, fused to the ground, but the faces that are encountered are ghostly and bloody, stripped of their features. The doorway out is itself a decomposing head still reaching out and screaming without a voice. You get the sense you've stumbled across a mass grave, which is only compounded by the ominous ambience in the background. Should you be morbid enough to stab the scattered organs and body parts, don't be surprised if you hear them scream.
Sewer of the Imperial City. Star Wars: Shadows of the Empire. In an attempt to save Leia, Luke, Dash, and company head to the sewer system to prepare their plan. Dash's role is to clear their escape route once the Jedi Master and his friends have the rebellion leader in tow. But this mission isn't as simple as planting a few pulse bombs. It's a maze down there with the foulest looking pipes and waterways ever seen. Not only are there armed guards on patrol and robot sentries that crop up in the worst places, but the wildlife is not to be trifled with. There is ample health and weaponry to find, but it's easy to be overwhelmed in such a dark place. With water making up a large part of the level, it's only prudent that some of the scariest encounters are with creatures that attack you from the deep, who can also hit you quickly whilst on dry land. The giant Dianoga at the last stretch of the mission is imposing to say the least, making Dash look like an insect in comparison. Facing this multi-tentacled monstrosity is like a fly going up against a horde of fly swatters with sharp teeth. Many will remember this level from their childhood as being where they left the game from fear alone. Treehouse, Farcry. Jack Carver's training didn't cover genetically augmented super monkeys, but that's just what he'll face in this level. The experiments have escaped running rampant in the jungle, and you get to see their abilities firsthand from the moment you walk through the first door. From there, you head up into the trees where the screams and shouts of mercenary forces engaging the Trigen and clearly being vastly outmatched. Both the creatures and enemy soldiers appear from nowhere in this dense forest, with shots seemingly coming from random directions. Being high up may not be the smartest move if you don't want to be spotted, but to risk being on the ground is another story altogether. At least you can enjoy the sweet sight of a couple hostiles being barreled over along the path.
Surface 2, Goldeneye 64. If there is one word that defines what makes Surface 2 so good, yet frightening, it's this: atmosphere. The obscured horizon under the blood-red sky, unable to see where the enemies will come from, complete isolation, which in and of itself can be the epitome of horror. Even the soundtrack emotes a sense of overwhelming odds in a strange land. Siberia isn't exactly known as being the most hospitable of landscapes, and what little signs of civilization you find, the army huts and warehouses, are all patrolled by Soviet forces. Their cameras are ever watchful, and most guards have the advantage of being able to track you wherever you hide. Even after a mission accomplished, you still wind up falling into their laps. Given the reputation the USSR has with political prisoners, you can bet a terrible fate awaits you.
Engineering Deck, System Shock 2. Overrun by the many and all systems under the control of the rogue AI, the Von Braun interstellar spaceship may as well be a tomb. A celebration of mankind's first faster-than-light capable vessel, all the crew discovered in the vast reaches of space was death and pain. As the soldier, you get to see the engine that made it all come true as you explore the engineering deck. The tight fluidic channels breathing radiation make the perfect ambush point for pipe and shotgun hybrids to take you by surprise. And don't be surprised if a few jump out from behind closed doors. Engineering control and the cargo bays are dark and in ruin, with the protocol droids eager to rip you apart, as well as red monkeys seeking revenge upon the crew who experimented on them. It's easy to get lost if you don't follow the signs, and with the eerie techno music pumping through the speakers, you'll constantly be looking over your shoulder for the threat of death.
Vault 11, Fallout New Vegas. Throughout the ravaged lands of post-nuclear war America, there's many secrets to be uncovered, and often a lot of the intrigue in New Vegas comes from the slow revelations that you are faced with. Vault 11, as the courier first enters, is patched in election posters, all of which are covered in slogans that seemingly make no sense, that is, until the story starts to unravel. It turns out that as part of the American government and Vault Tech's social experiments, those in Vault 11 were instructed to sacrifice one of their own every year or have everyone in the vault face certain death. However, this was a fabrication. If the dwellers refused to make a sacrifice, they would actually be greeted with a message saying the door was unlocked and that they were a shining example of humanity. Evidently, this had not occurred, as by the time the dwellers refused to sacrifice each other, only 5 people remained in total. This vault is one of the most unsettling in the games as a testament to the vulnerability of the human moral compass and the dangers of a utilitarian perspective in times of great peril. Only one made it out alive according to the recordings left behind and skeletal evidence, leaving you to wonder forever how people can cause each other so much pain for self-preservation.
If there's anyone out there at all, I hope they never have to find out. Ready, Harry? Yeah. No, wait!
The Bunker, Uncharted, Drake's Fortune. When the Germans came in search of El Dorado, they didn't count on the last explorers unfortunate enough to find it to have left terrible beasts behind. By the time Nathan Drake arrives at the submarine bunker many years later, the place is in ruins with only the bones of the dead to greet him, or so he hoped. The dark caverns are the home of the Descendants, horrific mutations that are animalistic in nature, agile, and incredibly strong. It takes a lot to gun one down with an old World War II MP40, and look how much good that did the German soldiers. There are enough clues left behind to tell the story of the disaster that happened here, and once you turn on the generator to leave, you'll also succeed in waking up the rest of the family. Pickman Gallery, Fallout 4. We all make choices, and in Fallout, our choices make us. Often, when players are faced with raiders and other villains in the wasteland, they don't think twice about dispatching them. However, the Pickman Gallery makes for a startling glimpse into the potential repercussions of an obsession with enforcing good with little regard for anything else. Pickman is a serial killer who has taken it upon himself to murder any unfortunate raider that makes their way near him, and his gallery is a testament to his life's work. There are heads, body parts, and various paintings made with suspicious red paint that create a clear picture as to his one true pursuit in life, the vicious murders and artistic preservation of his violent pursuits. As you make your way deeper into the bowels of the building, you will also come across some of the rejects of his creations and half-mutilated corpses that only bits of have been used. Perhaps the worst aspect of this is that if you kill the raiders surrounding Pickman when you finally find him in the basement, he will leave you a note thanking you and will affectionately nickname you Killer. This will leave you with the unsettling feeling that maybe you and this murderer of the waste aren't as different morally as you'd like to think.
G.F.S. Valhalla, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. The wreckage of an Olympus-class Galactic Federation battleship lists dead in the space of the F.E.A.R system, hidden deep within the S.T.A.L.K.E.R nebula. The skirmish between the G.F.S. Valhalla and space pirates left it in complete disarray, more so than would be expected from such an enemy, especially since the pirates themselves appear to be more organized in their attack, but left behind key components they would otherwise usually take. Once Samus sets foot on board, a horrific scene of the last moments of the crew awaits her. Frozen dead in their final positions, having the life force drained from them, the soldiers are evidently desperate in their escape from whatever creatures had been attacking them. You may even find several space pirate corpses amongst them, meaning that their pet Metroids may not be as obedient as they seem. An eerie final message alluding to the approaching darkness is hidden on the terminals, but the whole ship is creepy enough that the warning seems redundant. Samus will have to battle past many of the Phazon strain of Metroid enemies to discover the extent of the damage, and uncover the key to infiltrate the Leviathan battleship. Maybe you'll find solace knowing your comrades did not die in vain. Children of the Taronne Tenement, SWAT 4. The life of a SWAT officer is fast-paced and full of danger. It's your job to be in first and take down any hostiles before they put you down. This particular cult, who have assembled enough explosives to level their whole building of apartments and then some, really make you sweat every time you need to breach a door. Taronians are well armed, and unfortunately much of the block is in utter darkness, making it difficult to spot targets and civilians alike. Keeping casualties to a minimum is a high priority, but it's not just you who has to stay safe, but that of your squad as well. The addition of quick decision-making makes the siege far more intense, ramping up the fear factor. Most of the rooms are filled with junk, but seeing the devout writings on the wall, religious symbols, and text detailing the horrific beliefs of the cult brings with it a sense that what you're dealing with are no ordinary devotees. The members are themselves crazy and unpredictable, with no regard to hostage safety over their own lives. Who else would pack explosive devices in such an unstable structure, keeping you worried that every decision you make may bring the whole building down on top of you.
Shadow Temple, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. The Shadow Temple in Ocarina of Time is a mixed bag of every possible ominous thing in a Zelda game. Found at the back of the Kakariko Village graveyard and accessed by playing the Nocturne of Shadow, it boasts an enemy set consisting of everything from zombies to spiders, with skeleton warriors and mummies in between. The temple itself, however, perhaps carries the most unsettling content. Created by the royal family of Hyrule to torture and extort information from treasonous individuals, Link can find remnants of torture devices and old bloodstains throughout the area. The royals were so ashamed by the history of the Shadow Temple that those who knew of it were forbidden from ever speaking of the area, and perhaps this was for the best. The boss that Link has to face in this doomed place is known as Dead Hand, a pale and bloody-looking fleshy lump with cavernous eyes and a mouth filled with teeth. It will use its many appendages to grab at the young fairy boy and drag him to his fate where so many others have fallen. It just goes to show you that even under the cheery facade of Kakariko Village, anything can be hiding.
Delta Labs, Sector 4, Doom 3. Sector 4 begins quietly, strange considering the gauntlet you faced to get this far. But once Betruger finishes his speech and the doors open, you're greeted with a demoralizing sight. The walls are caked with blood, and smeared words like fear, succumb, and die coat the cleanest sections, encouraging the Marine to turn back now while he has the chance. 2 chainsaw zombies give you a little surprise, but it's the portal to hell and the first Hell Knights emerging from it that provide the pee your pants moment. Malcolm's bone-chilling cackle as the demons bear down on you and the sheer toughness of these enemies burns this level into your mind. Once the battle is over and you can't think things could possibly get any worse, the Betrayer of Earth sends you straight through the portal, right into hell itself.
Happy Hill Asylum, Postal 2, Eternal Damnation. Asylums are scary at the best of times, but the Happy Hill Asylum from Postal 2's Eternal Damnation mod kicks the tone up a notch. As John Murray, the player must navigate the rundown cell blocks, morgue, and administration sectors in order to escape a serial killer who has broken loose. In the confusion, the orderlies and security personnel have mistaken one psychopath murderer for another and are coming after you as well, usually appearing in groups of 3 or more. The tense music and sounds of the patients still locked in their rooms keep the pace and give you a good jump from time to time. Plus the creepy addition of the toy room and the doctor's morbid fascination with dismemberment is just... no thanks. This is only the first level of the mod, so it only gets worse from here.
The Library, Halo Combat Evolved. It's a long trek through the underground facility from where you teleport down all the way to the index chamber and the key to salvation, but the flood have escaped en masse and are crawling out of every hole, nook, and cranny between you and your goal. Master Chief has his work cut out for him as he swims through the disgusting mutated forms of his comrades and fallen enemies, taken over by this parasitic lifeform. Even though 343 Guilty Spark doesn't help you fight, it's still nice having some company through the dim, daunting hallways as wave after wave of flood overwhelms your position. The moments when you must leave to unlock the blast doors, however, are among the most scariest in the level. Knowing that soon the monsters will try to kill you as you desperately fight back all alone, don't let yourself get cornered and drown, because the flood will show you no mercy.
Nightmares, Max Payne. Terrible memories are painful enough when awake, but when Max has slipped several drugs during his investigation into the murder of his family, he must relive that horrific night all over again. The music hits you with dread as you enter Max's house. An otherwise warm and welcoming abode, the dimensions are warped and the framing on Max is stretched back as though his subconscious were fighting to escape. The hallways and blood trails twist and turn in a maze, with only the haunting screams and cries of Max's baby to guide your way. Even a fourth wall break where Max is told he's in both a graphic novel and a video game comes across as downright disturbing. Past the blood-stained walls of the nursery and the strewn-out baby's toys that spell out dead, your inner demon awaits.
No, please God, no.
Sometimes, in order to move on from your tragedy, you will have to face the darkest parts of yourself dead in the eyes, and gun them down.
Marine Mission 1, Alien vs. Predator, 2010. Touchdown on Freya's prospect is by no means smooth, but that's no reason to call off the bug hunt. However, it becomes clear very quickly that the bugs are the ones hunting you. As you make your way through the abandoned colony, the extent of what has been lost becomes clear, with indications of civilization elsewhere, but no sign of people. The noises of the facility keep you on edge, since you're already aware of what's stalking you. When they finally make their appearance, the xenomorphs are relentless and cunning, blending into the darkness with ease. You may find some allies along the way, but by mission's end, you'll be running for your life, not wanting to look back, alone against the hive. If that's not enough reasons to be scared, then the next level should surely give you one.
Mansion, Shell Shock 2, Blood Trails. The jungles of Vietnam hide many things. The lethal Viet Cong, abandoned relics from the French colonization, and something far worse. The mansion is supposed to be a safe house for the US soldiers, in the middle of a three-way battle between them, the VC, and White Knight zombies. Although it's clear, once you've cleared the traps and minefields surrounding the property, that the mansion is by no means safe. Infected have overwhelmed the place, and the thin corridors and moonlighting don't help your aim against a charging enemy, let alone slow lumbering ones. It's all the more unnerving hearing their droning wails and snarl through the thin walls, keeping you guessing where they'll jump out from next. As for meeting up with your squad, you can kiss those hopes goodbye. With the sounds of the bloody battle all around and a meat cleaver infected in your path, you'll be glad to get back in the jungle war zone. It was a fight just to get in, but it's a slaughter getting back out.
Catacombs. Return to Castle Wolfenstein. The Nazis are desperate enough to try anything to win the war, even resurrecting the dead to fight amongst their ranks. Well, the zombies aren't exactly willing to pick a side. And if Blazkowicz wants to put a stop to those plans, he'll have to take a trip down to the mausoleum and face these horrors beyond the grave. Past levels had you sneaking around and shooting soldiers. Suddenly, the game shifts its theme to horror and places you deep into trap-filled rooms, full of dimly lit corridors and horrific atmosphere. Zombies and mummies burst from their tombs and through heavy brick walls to launch attacks on both you and the Germans protecting the area. Undead knights are also found in the area. They carry shields, swords, or battle axes and can make quick work of any mortal before them. Killing them again can take some time. The catacombs themselves can be dangerous, with the paths constantly giving way, causing you to fall into antechambers full of awaiting enemies. And with the lack of gun-toting Nazis to loot, you better have stockpiled beforehand, or else you'll risk joining the ranks of the dead. Hotel Basement, The Last of Us. The minute Joel finds himself underwater in the dark, dank basement of the Pittsburgh Hotel, the atmosphere of terror begins to creep into the game in a major way. Injured and left to swim through an area filled with the bodies of the dead, it's easy to feel an early sense of foreboding. Once you emerge, Joel will be up to his waist in filthy water. You are tasked with finding a keycard and turning on the generator necessary to return to the top of the building and to Ellie. The tight corridors, collapsing ceilings, scattered debris, and the overwhelming eerie silence all culminate in a sense of fearful urgency as you traverse the level, faltering flashlight in hand and heart in your throat. Runners will charge at you from the pitch black, catching you off guard. The cries of the infected travel through the air as you attempt to carry out your mission, but the only way to survive is ruthless efficiency. Your only other option is death. Midwich Elementary, Silent Hill. The local elementary school of Silent Hill has a dark and sordid past. Long before the horrific fate that befell the community, many students found themselves at the mercy of abusive pupils and teachers alike, especially the young Gillespie child. Now the halls and classrooms are filled with the hellish mutations known as the knife-wielding gray children and mumblers. They can easily trap Harry in their grasp, while the rest slash with their blades and claws. Larval stalkers can set off your alarm, making it easy to fool you into thinking imminent danger is near. Float stings make for an annoying obstacle, but the basement holds something far worse. A school in the night is disturbing enough, but in its otherworld state, the building is rusted brown and red, and fresh hanging corpses can be seen outside the walls. Beware the bathroom, as it can easily make you lose your way, and the countless classrooms with desks and chairs getting in your way can easily trap you in with the monsters. But the scariest thing of all is knowing that at one point, this was just a normal, everyday school once, all now lost to darkness and despair.
Dunwich Ruins, Fallout 3. You were warned to never enter the Dunwich building to the southwest. There's bad mojo in that place. But curiosity and a need to scavenge always leads the bravest of survivors of the nuclear fallout to desperation. Originally a rock drill manufacturer, Dunwich's offices have been decimated by the explosions, and its workers subsequently transformed into a variety of ghouls, from your run-of-the-mill regulars to glowing ones. But that's not all that makes this Lovecraft fan's dream a terrifying place to be. As you journey from section to section, you'll come across journal entries of an adventurer called Jamie, who has come to Dunwich to find his father, with each entry not only detailing his progress and discoveries, but also documenting his slow transformation into a ghoul. Coupled with the lightless depravity of the building and its dark cave system below, as well as strange paranormal visions and objects moving on their own, it's a difficult and trying path to tread. Once you reach the lower levels, you'll hear whispers in the air, and at the very depths, you'll discover the strange obelisk shooting out of the ground, covered in skulls, with a human figure emerging from its form. You probably won't have much time to admire it, since you'll have to take care of its worshippers, along with the familiar face leading the charge.
The Sorrow, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. On the very cusp of death, Snake wades through a river of his sorrows, the very lives he has cut down to achieve his mission's end return to drag him into the afterlife, ebbing his strength to return to the world of the living. The Sorrow, a Cobra operative who died long ago at the hands of the boss, still carries out their will by challenging the young soldier to a battle of wills, being the medium who channels the spirits of the dead into Snake's path. Depending on how you progress through the game, this level will either be fraught with ghostly obstacles, or void of everything except for the rest of the Cobra unit and the Sorrow himself. Seeing the lives you've ended or played a part in taking makes you question your actions and the path you have taken to get here. The Sorrow sends ghastly energy spirals at you to shock and weaken you. Finally, once you have faced the consequences of your actions, you will find the Sorrow's corpse and be met with your ultimate fate. Death.
Comstock House, BioShock Infinite. Built on the heads of the three founders of Columbia, Comstock House carries the atmosphere of the BioShock series history heavily within its design, a welcome sight for players jarred by the shiny exterior and rotten interior of the rest of Columbia. The past activities of the house are revealed as Booker makes his way through the awful experiments and breaking down of dissenters part of everyday life. The first floor is home to an asylum with the patients still inside, although the building has long since fallen into disrepair. These patients are cared for and guarded by the Boys of Silence, objectively one of the scarier enemies in the game, as if Booker disturbs them, they'll use their helmets to call for assistance. One of the other disturbing things as you progress through Comstock House is the unveiling of Elizabeth's trauma and the awful brainwashing and conversion mechanisms she was raised around. Disturbingly, the remnants of torture both through the tears and the abandoned operating rooms all echo with the stories of the past. Once more, as in much of the series, the horror is in the nuance of what's left in the world.
Ravenholm, Half-Life 2. Ravenholm is surrounded by infamy, both in the real world and that of the Half-Life games, as being frightening. To go into that town almost means certain death. Unfortunately for Gordon Freeman, he has no other choice. The village now in ruins, all that remains of the former residents are the zombies, forced to live as a puppet of the Zen's head crabs. Traps are near to use at your discretion, but it's all a matter of timing and not getting caught in them. As you begin moving through the rundown buildings, and the wide streets become narrow doorways and apartments, it becomes easy to get caught off guard by enemies. But on the rooftops, you'll encounter one of the most frightening hostiles in the game, the fast zombie. They charge at Gordon on all fours and leap with a terrifying scream upon their prey. Partnered with the poison zombies, they make this stretch of town a nightmare to get through. If you manage to make it through the graveyard, be thankful that at least Father Gregory was on your side.
The Morgue, Scarecrow Nightmare, Batman, Arkham Asylum. As Batman fights to take back the asylum from the criminally insane, he heads down to the lower levels of the medical wing. It is here he encounters an even deadlier nightmare than the one he's currently living. Scarecrow, also known as Dr. Jonathan Crane, has escaped and is wreaking havoc on the staff and patients alike. Batman pursues and witnesses the death of an old friend along the way. He arrives at the morgue where he encounters the ghost of his past, his parents,
Father.
Thomas and Martha Wayne.
Mom?
Help us, Bruce.
They plead and scold him before opening the last body bag. That is when Crane drags you to his own twisted nightmare world where the asylum is spiraling into a void, being torn apart around the gigantic form of Scarecrow himself. It's nail-biting trying to keep out of his eyesight. For one glimpse of Batman and the Scarecrow will destroy the Dark Knight in one swoop. If you manage to make it out, Crane will be nowhere to be found, and you'll be left wondering just how much did his fear toxin affect you before you realized.
Orphanage, Painkiller, Hell and Damnation. An old rickety orphanage built in the middle of a swamp, surrounded and infested with monsters of the damned, situated between heaven and hell and purgatory. This is only the first level of the game, with Daniel Garner seeking redemption by battling his way into heaven. It's not only the freaky degraded interior with its rotting walls and cleaver-wielding preacher in the kitchens, but this first outing will involve killing children. Lots of children. Evil girls, boys, skeleton kids, marionette kids, kids with bags on their heads. Seeing them flayed open, their blood splattered on the high walls, body parts blasted clean off tends to unnerve people, even if they are monsters. That combined with the eerie musical chimes reminiscent of music boxes make for a terrifying location. You better hope that all this carnage is worth a free pass to heaven, because a lifetime of therapy sure as hell won't help.
Mansion of Madness, Time Splitters, Future Perfect. What seems at first to be little more than a trek through an abandoned mansion turns into a real horror show. The Brotherhood of Ultra Science has created a race of zombies in their laboratories beneath the surface, and in order to destroy the work they did there, you'll have to fight through the well-armed horde to do that. But just in case you thought the living dead was all you had to contend with, you'd be mistaken. There are black wraiths, tunneling worms that burst from the ground to snack on victims, swarms of beetles that chase you through the corridors, carcasses of cattle in the kitchens, the fire-wielding ghost of a dead girl, not to mention the infamous deer haunter. The boss of the stage is an extreme version of this, and this princess isn't holding back. The mansion itself is very creepy, with rooms filled with blood-stained beds, some with knives sticking out of victims still wrapped up in their sheets. There's even a bathroom with a tub filled with blood, and a skull floating above. Even with JoBeth Casey as your companion, it still manages to scare you at times, especially seeing how the monsters treat their survivors. It's not a fate you'd want for yourself.
Best Save Company, F.E.A.R 3. One thing that no player wants in any F.E.A.R game is to find themselves in an area with lots of hiding places for a wide variety of unholy beings and monsters. Best Save Company in F.E.A.R 3, however, provides exactly that, complete with nasties around nearly every corner. The store has long since lost its commercial appeal and has been taken over by cannibals and cultists who have turned the shop into their home. There are multiple shrines and bloodstains all through the aisles, and candles that have been lit in devotion to Alma. The narrow walkways and high-stacked shelves contribute to a heightened sense of alertness and paranoia, and each section of the store brings with it a new sense of horror. The maze of the television section makes you question every move you make. The bloody meat locker brings fresh disgust with its strung-up corpses, and the refrigeration area will absolutely chill you to the bone. However, you should count yourself lucky. The concept art for this level was even more disturbing than the completed game.
Mines, Penumbra Overture. Taking up the majority of the original game, the Greenland mine of Penumbra Overture is where the horror started. Being led there by his deceased father, Philip becomes trapped within and must venture deeper if he wants any hope of getting out alive. As you solve puzzles along your way, the mystery of what happened to the inhabitants deepens, and it becomes clear that you are not alone. Dogs, giant spiders, and earthworms attack from the shadows, betrayed by the sharp yellow glow of their eyes through the darkness. This is obviously not the case with the worms, who are far more deadly than the others, able to kill on contact. But the sheer overwhelming hopelessness of your situation is enough to keep you on edge throughout. It's especially creepy hearing the patter of animal feet or shuffling of arachnid legs somewhere down the tunnel. The mines are absolutely daunting, and if you want to give it a go for yourself, be our guest.
Water Prison, Silent Hill 4, The Room. Venturing deeper into Walter Sullivan's disturbed psyche, Henry Townsend arrives at the Water Prison, an abandoned water processing plant on Toluca Lake, used by the Order of Silent Hill to hide orphans and corpses of their victims. The rotting interior was a nightmare for the children trapped inside, doomed to be preyed upon by the worst of the guards, Andrew DeSalvo. The circular layout of most of the rooms keeps you feeling as though you'll wind back up where you started. Add to that the branching pathways to cut off rooms. It'll make you think you're playing chutes and ladders. The various monsters infesting the corridors are disgusting, especially the toadstools and tremors in your path. The more frightening are the wallmen, who appear suddenly and without warning. But the worst is the twin victims and its judging faces staring, and gnarly hand-pointing. Once they give chase, you'll want to run as fast as you can. Just wait until you find the tormented ghost of Victim 18. He'll bring a new dimension of haunting to your tiny claustrophobic existence.
Brookhaven Hospital, Silent Hill 2. The Silent Hill series is known for being symbolism heavy with its themes, monsters, and location. Brookhaven's mental and physical care hospital are no exception to the rule. As unsanitary as you can get, this facility is degraded into a cesspool of rot and grime. Strange noises fill the air, such as shattering glass and even the squealing of a pig in the basement. The records tell of the patients and their suffering of abuse from the doctors and nurses supposed to treat them. All this related back to James' late wife, Mary, who often felt the only reason she was being kept alive was so the hospital could drain them of money. This explains why the bubblehead nurses who appear and wildly shriek as they swing their metal pipes to attack the protagonists are portrayed as sickly and mutated, their faces covered with plastic. Not to mention the horrible monstrosity in the first floor examination room. This hospital's cramped, dark, septic, and full of bad memories, all of which are coming to life just to haunt you.
Prison. Amnesia. The Dark Descent. After tumbling out of the elevator shaft, Daniel is confronted with the most challenging area of Brennenburg Castle, the prison. This level is split between a southern section, consisting mainly of cells, and the northern section, which also houses the kitchen and storage. It is here that you get your first proper look into the sordid history of Alexander's affairs, how he created his horrific gatherers, as well as face a great many of them firsthand. They seem to always be on your tail, and every second in their presence, hiding in the dark, means a diminishing of your sanity. The twisted maze of similar-looking cells may keep you running round in circles, trying to find your way out. Whether it's the nearby screaming of tortured prisoners, the pleading cries of a young girl meeting a terrible fate, or the hallucinations of your first tour through the prison with Alexander himself, you'll never make it to the cistern with your mind intact.
Moscow Library, Metro, 2033. The post-apocalyptic ruin the world has been left in since the events of World War III has made the remnants of humanity desperate to survive. Against the harsh radioactive climate, the hostile mutations, and virulent plagues ravaging the Earth, the Metro system struggles to find the resources to continue what little of the human race lives on. As circumstances call, that journey leads them to the Moscow State Library, where the decaying ruins house vital information deep in its archives. After separating from your parents as a result of a demon attack in the main hall, still littered with the frozen remains of Fourth Reich soldiers, you traverse the cold dead halls of the depository. This maze is full of patrolling librarians, large ape-like mutations that are very powerful, resilient, and territorial. They impose Artyom with their roars and large muscular frames, which is daunting to witness. But you must face those fears and never turn your back, or they will rip you to shreds. Compared to the black librarians in the flooded archives, these regular ones are quite docile, so count your lucky stars should they choose to ignore you.
Titan Elementary School, Dead Space 2. With the whole of Titan Station in ruins after the necromorph attack, not even the young survived. Despite the trail of destruction consistent with the rest of the concourse, blood, bodies, physical damage, the cheerful art and displays of the student body are still perfectly preserved, adding a sense of sadness to the scene. But by the first time you meet a crawler blasting its human mother to smithereens, that despair for the dead is replaced with horror. Children, young babies all the way up through their early teens, have been absorbed into the necromorph collective and are most likely the ones responsible for the state of the school. The babies explode on contact, yet retain the typical infant noises that unnerve the player. Older children make up the pack, which swarm around Isaac to leap and claw at his armor. Fighting them in the classrooms and playground is surreal, and finding the little details of life before the attack only make things worse, such as the set for an upcoming play still propped up on the hall stage. It's clear from the documents left behind that the children were already being affected by the marker, and Titan Station fell the consequences. So will you.
Fort Frolic, BioShock. The densely layered atmosphere of the City of Rapture is quite intense, with some locations being far more disturbing than others. Every boss in BioShock has somewhat tailored their area to suit their needs, but Sander Cohen's transformation of Fort Frolic takes the crepe cake. Created to give the adults in Rapture a place to unwind, it was a hedonistic paradise, with gambling, shopping, art, movies, and strip clubs. While on the surface Fort Frolic seemed to be a place dedicated to indulgence, there was trouble bubbling beneath as its overlord, Sander Cohen, began his descent into madness. When Cohen was faced with the closure of the fort, he promised one last hurrah, where all citizens were invited for a final event filled with carefree enjoyment. However, he trapped those who came, covering them in plaster and positioning them so they could be his eternal sculptures. When Jack arrives in Rapture, he must traverse the old pleasure spots and face the frozen, screaming faces of citizens long trapped. To make matters even worse, some burst from their poses to attack you, so the area is rife with jump scares. The mission you are given to survive Fort Frolic is sickening, helping Cohen to complete his magnum opus. It's certainly not for the faint-hearted, but to be fair, there's not many parts of the doomed City of Rapture that are.
Ocean House Hotel, Vampire: The Masquerade Bloodlines. As a vampire fledgling, it's usually up to you to do all the scaring, but the Ocean House Hotel turns those tables right around in your head. From the moment you enter the darkened interior, it's clear that you're an unwelcome guest. Vases and lights are thrown your way by an invisible force, and the chandelier doesn't take kindly to your intrusion either. You won't be able to leave, however, until you discover the extent of the hotel's terrifying past, meaning you'll have to take a tumble through the staircase down into the basement. The ghostly apparitions and disembodied whispers only grow in frequency here, building tension you can cut with a knife. The axe-wielding maniac you glimpsed in the foyer certainly did a number haunting this place, becoming only more apparent as you work your way back upstairs. The newspaper clippings and diary entries tell the tale of a family minding the establishment over a long week holiday. While the wife and children enjoyed their stay, the father grew jealous and suspicious that his bride was having an affair, and a locket was the proof. On the final night, he pursued all three through the hotel, leaving his son's head in the washing machine, his daughter cut like firewood, and his wife was never found. Both the true events that inspired the Amityville Horror and the Stanley Kubrick adaptation of Stephen King's The Shining are clear inspirations behind this level, which will have you shaking till the end.
SCU Building, Condemned 2. With how rampant crime can be in Metro City, it's good to have a safe haven to return to. The SCU Building is one of those places, since it is the headquarters of a serial killer investigation task force. But when Ethan returns for a medical checkup, this heavily guarded facility suddenly becomes abandoned. The eerie quiet and darkened offices send a chill through your spine. The thought that if even the serial crimes unit can be compromised, then nowhere is safe. It doesn't stop there, as paranormal hallucinations and flashes of the alcohol demon taunting you appear. Strange tar creatures make their attack. Other officers of the SCU have been corrupted by their influence and fight back against the Allies. Even your only friend through the whole ordeal was simply the illusion of a dead man, the assault merely a hallucination. It's unsettling just how easily your mind can be invaded and how real it all felt.
Wade Elementary, F.E.A.R 2, Project Origin. Paid for by Armacam since 1978, this is clearly not your typical elementary school. A good place for kids. Beneath the cheery exterior lies a terrible web of secrets based around an experimental project known as Paragon. The children were drugged and taken to a secret facility deep underground, where they were altered, monitored, then sent back to the school to be separated into classes and administered tests to see which of them presented the most paranormal abilities. The many spectres still active throughout is a testament to how charged the environment is with that energy, especially since the Origin facility explosion. Alma shows up more frequently as well, manipulating the environment to keep you on your toes, separating the player from Stokes, as well as using her apparitions to attack Beckett, Replica, and Black Ops soldiers alike. But in each classroom, the colourful papers and drawings the children left behind remain, along with the horrific notes of all that occurred here. It's when you head to the admin building and music room that things take a turn for the worst, since the remnants have come out to play.
Lab X-18, Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl. The zone grows less like Earth by the day, leading to incredibly disturbing mutations in the local flora and fauna. Lab X-18, established underneath Dark Valley, was set up to monitor and study these creatures, but more specifically, discover the specific aspects of psychic radiation. Clearly, this venture resulted in disaster, since by the time the Stalker arrives, this facility has been overrun by snorks, poltergeists, and burner anomalies. Horrific creatures charging at you from out of seemingly nowhere is by no means a fun time, and the pseudo-giant in warehouse won't present you a warm welcome. You'll be spending much time dodging enemies rather than killing them, trying to frantically find vital information amongst the corpses, all the while hearing the tunes of an old record player echoing through the halls. The frightening world of nuclear power is a pathway to evolution some would consider to be unnatural, and Lab X-18 is the perfect example of such a place.
Badwater. Fear. First encounter Assault Recon. Fear is already a scary game, but Badwater is easily the best representation of what the name implies. Set in a wastewater treatment facility, it is the first proper outing where Point Man encounters continual hallucinations of Paxton Fettel and the young girl in red, Alma. Glimpses of both will be seen throughout, with the former taunting Point Man as he progresses. Bloodstains and corpses can be spotted throughout the industrial facility, and your path will inevitably lead out of the dimly lit corridors to the pitch-black tunnels, where even the slightest movement will catch you off guard. A bad situation only becomes worse as the replica soldiers attack you from all sides. Not only are paranormal forces working against you, but physical forces could be hiding around any corner, waiting to gun you down. You'll just have to shoot your way out till the water runs red. Shalebridge Cradle. Thief. Deadly Shadows. Shalebridge Cradle is more than an abandoned orphanage, and nothing as simple as an asylum. This building is alive, and time means very little within its walls. Once housing orphans and mentally ill alike, the facility met its end not long after a fire engulfed the staff wing, most likely started by one of the patients. Following this incident, a young girl was murdered on the premises, and her spirit haunts its walls. The living will of Shalebridge never forgets those who enter its doors, and traps anyone that sets foot inside, bending what remains of them to its will. As a result, horrific undead known as puppets roam the halls to add another victim to the cradle. Their presence disturbs the electrical power, and they are easily lost in the dark, as well as difficult to kill. The charred, rotting remains of the stone and wood frame of the building provides the perfect horror backdrop in a game that does not focus on horror elsewhere, making it quite the unique experience for a Thief player. Make sure you are well stocked before entering, because escaping from the wards is a nightmare.
Bart's department store. Condemned Criminal Origins. While Condemned Criminal Origins is obviously going to have many scary locations to explore, there's unanimous agreement on which is the scariest of them all. From the second you step into Bart's department store, you will be overwhelmed with the unsettling feeling that there is something not quite right here. As crackling festive music plays over the speakers in the main area, and Christmas decorations from times long past hang askew on the walls, Ethan finds himself with no option but to proceed through this doomed place. As you play through the level, there are a host of enemies ready to pop out and scare you, and the worst of these are the mannequins, who are actually barely recognizable addicts. They will remain completely still, giving you the illusion of being simply store dummies, but then jump out at you should you disturb them. Bart's department store is also the home to the Matchmaker, a serial killer with a long and storied history with Ethan, who has tracked him there throughout his adventures. Should you make it past all the other threats, you may find the Matchmaker. But things may not quite be as they seem.
Moira Asylum. Thief 2014. Established to treat the mentally insane or impaired, most notably kleptomaniacs, and later expanded to house prisoners, the asylum certainly has a deep and troubled history. After a massive riot left the facility isolated off the mainland, many have sailed over to see what remains, but none have returned. For a thief like Garrett, the prospect of unclaimed valuables is enough incentive, but also finding some information about Aaron. The hallways and padded cells are falling apart with equipment strewn across the floor by the rigors of time and nature, but otherwise seemingly untouched by humanity. It evokes an eerie sensation of being watched, especially when the environmental jump scares pop in on occasion. Then there's the glimpses of ghosts through the keyholes and whispers in the air, the loud sounds of unnatural footsteps down the hallways and lit candles where they clearly shouldn't be. Just walking over paper and glass makes you jump in shock. Eventually, the patients still on the premises make their appearance, and they can be creepy enough, but it's going down into the prison where you encounter the freaks that really sums up why Moira's Asylum has its reputation.
Old Underground Metro. F.E.A.R. Perseus Mandate. Long before the events of the series, the original Metro line was devastated in a catastrophic black, leaving the city to pave over and start anew. But after the Origin facility explosion, the second F.E.A.R team is split up, and you are forced to explore its dark depths. The ruins are vast, and all that remains are the old Metro chairs, as well as storage crates from a more peaceful time. The tunnels are also rife with paranormal activity, with ample numbers of shades, nightmares, and scarecrows blocking your path. Not to mention the spike in hallucinations Alma throws your way. When your partner unceremoniously bites the dust and you're left alone in the dark void, you suddenly realize just how much you missed the company. Darkheart. F.E.A.R. Extraction Point. In the lowest level of Auburn Memorial Hospital, Point Man finds himself trapped at the mercy of Alma's psychic hallucinations. The wards are coated with blood and bodies, her minions making quick work of anyone in their path. The locker rooms are dark, with a few hidden surprises in the showers. Alma herself makes an appearance in the morgue, where she takes you on a journey into her psychic asylum. An ancient, decrepit sanatorium where every cell is filled with tortured souls of Alma's revenge. A few familiar faces are present, or some faces are missing entirely, but you won't be privileged to look in on all the patients. Should you stumble upon an empty cell, you too will know what it feels like to be trapped forever in a mind. The visuals are all around disturbing and unpredictable at times, meaning you won't know what to expect behind the next door or around the corner. As the visions draw to a close, a foreboding image of the two Almas, old and young, merging together snaps you back into reality, just in time to catch your ride to safety. But really, is anywhere in this game really safe?
The Basement, Resident Evil 7. The new first-person perspective in Capcom's latest main series outing of Resident Evil doesn't diminish the horror one iota, and this is felt most when exploring the depths of the terrifying residence. Tight corridors and low-level lighting keep you guessing as to where the next molded will appear from, and they are in no short supply. Their carapaces line the walls, and there are many corners and hiding places for them to lay in wait. You'll have to make your way through the incinerator room, dissection room, and finally the morgue if you want to escape. It won't be easy, especially since Jack has no intention on letting his house guests leave the party so soon. Even if you manage to make it past him, the only place you can leave is to the main house, where even more surprises await.
Brick Lane Community Nursery. Zombie. Your first glimpse of the nursery is from the outside. The swings and hopscotch sitting still in the rain. Trash and debris strewn about the once cheerful playground. The story is no different once you go inside. The childcare is in complete disarray, with toys and equipment left where they were dropped. You turn off the torch just not to see the catastrophe, if it weren't for the zombies hidden throughout the building. If the empty cribs and mystery of where the children disappear to doesn't scare you, then the corpses in their place should. The cafeteria sounds haunted, and the tight corridors and suspense of not knowing what's about to happen next fuels the paranoia to insane levels. The squelching underfoot as you tread through the copious amounts of blood in the basement doesn't build confidence. The basement section is near pitch black, and when you know something is down there, but the game forces you to undergo the path, it may actually cause a lot of players under pressure to put the controller down and walk away. Why do some of the best places to scavenge for supplies have to be the most disturbing and creepiest locations in survival horror?
Did you enjoy the video? Why not click the bell icon and subscribe to see more content from us at Tats.videos. And now let's see the creators of this video.